Okay, we are live. My name is Attorney Vince Davis, and this is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win. I'm joined tonight by my co-host, Mr. Darren Guy, all the way from Maine. Mr. Guy, how are you this evening?
We're doing very well up here in Maine, Mr. D. Thanks for asking.
Good, good. And I see we have a special guest here. We have Miss Beth Fisher. Miss Beth, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great, thank you. I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity again. We had a lot of positive feedback from the last interview that I did with y'all.
Very good. And you're from North Carolina, huh?
Yes, sir.
What part?
Edenton.
Where is that in relations to Greensboro?
Um, we're about it's about 4 hours out from Greensboro. We're on the coast,
Okay.
the Outer Banks.
The
Oh,
Outer Banks.
that sounds nice.
All right. So what's going on now with CPS in North Carolina?
Well, this case actually started a little bit over 2 years ago. Um, it involves my grandchildren, six of my grandchildren. Um, the Everything started with false allegations, as most cases do. They do not have any physical evidence at all. We have tons of physical evidence that proves that these children were not abused or neglected. We have medical records, we have therapy records, we have their school records, um, previous court custody issue records that we have. Um, and it's just very frustrating that it's gotten this far out and it's still going on. Um, my daughter actually, from the criminal case that was developed from the CPS case, my daughter had a court-appointed attorney for a year and a half. He had all of this evidence and didn't do anything at all to present it in any way, shape, or form to the court. Um, so she had him removed from the case and was going pro se. She had the case all outlined. She has two 6-inch binders that she has indexed with the evidence and everything ready to go to present her case. And her court date on July 10th, when we got to the courtroom, she was actively throwing up. They had given her a trash can, has always gotten severe migraines. So, we just assumed that was what it was. She continued to throw up as the judge was asking her questions. Um, Several of the court workers were laughing at her while this was going on. The judge finally asked her if she needed to go to get medical treatment, and she felt like that would be a good idea. It took two deputies to help her get out of the courtroom because she was shaking and so frail. They took her to the emergency room. They gave her some pain medications for her migraine, and they took her back to Albemarle District Jail, where she was being detained awaiting that trial. Two of the inmates there woke her up that evening because she was having convulsion-like spasms on her left side. And when they woke her up and got her down into the wheelchair, she realized that her left arm was numb. Um, they took her up to medical intake, and she was sitting up there for over an hour and a half before they called anybody to come get her or anybody to look in on her. During that time, her left leg went numb. We were not notified of any of this going on. I am her power of attorney and her medical power of attorney, and we were not notified of any of this. She was in the hospital in Elizabeth City at Albemarle Hospital. She was in there for I believe it was 24 days total. Um, it may have been 17. Everything just kind of runs together right there. But when she was released, she was discharged in a wheelchair, and she was sent to the women's prison facility in Raleigh because they had medical treatment facilities there for her. After she got there, she had another Um, when it, I haven't been able to get all of her medical records yet, so I don't know if it was actually a stroke or if it was the type of migraine that causes paralysis or if it was a TIA, whatever it was. She had another episode of that while she was in Raleigh. She was in Wake Med for over a week. And when she got back, she is now completely unable to use any of her, she can't use any of her left side. Her right leg is numb and she cannot use it. And she only has use of her right arm. So she is just totally at the mercy of when the nurses can get in there to get her up with the lift, to get her into her wheelchair, to be able to move about. She just yesterday was the first time in over a week that she had been bathed. Her hair had not been washed in over a month. Um, it just absolutely deplorable. But all that said, to say, like I said, she was pro se representing herself and now is not physically or she's just not able to do that anymore. She's just not able to defend herself anymore. So we are trying to find um, an attorney for the criminal hearing. Like I said, that it kind of ties into the CPS hearing. So if we can find someone who can win the criminal hearing, the CPS case would no longer be, an issue.
That's not true.
It's not.
Oh,
Okay.
firsthand right here. Not true. Doesn't matter.
Okay. We have medical records that prove that the caseworker has committed perjury over 7 times. The
What was the main reason for the children being taken again?
that's interesting.
To my notes.
The original thing that they removed them for was supposedly my son-in-law and my daughter not feeding their 15-year-old son.
Okay.
Gross negligence is what they called it, that led to severe malnutrition that led to an extended hospital stay. The only problem with that allegation is on the arrest warrant, it states the date of offense, January 3rd, 2021 through April 30th, 2021. This young man ran away from home on January 3rd, 2021. He was never back in the home. He was found 10 days after he ran away on January 17th. He was found by law enforcement, taken to the hospital where we have the medical records that show he was in good condition when he was taken to the hospital. He was not malnourished, has never been malnourished. And he did have an extended hospital stay there, but it was only because they could not find a mental facility that would accept him due to his own aggressive behavior. So, yeah, I mean, how do you get charged with neglect of someone that's not even in your care?
That's pretty impossible, though, isn't it?
Right. How does any of this stuff happen? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And after that, that was why the children were removed.
Okay.
The oldest 2 girls had been taken for forensic interviews on May 24th. The children were removed from the home on June 3rd of 2021. The girls had been taken for the forensic interviews. It mentions in the petition, in the narrative that CPS used to remove the children, it mentioned that they had forensic interviews, but it did not disclose any of the findings of that because they didn't find anything that was damning. And after the older 2 girls were with my daughter's ex-husband and my son-in-law's ex-partner, once they were with them for a month, all of a sudden sexual allegations came out.
Oh boy.
And they took them to a totally different forensic interviewer after that, which really sounds confusing. I mean, they themselves have said that the more forensic interviews you do on a child, the less accurate they are. And the further out from the event, the less accurate they are. The oldest daughter, she was actually in therapy because of being abused by her birth mother that now has her. She was in therapy during the time that these allegations supposedly happened. So for a counselor to be seeing her once a week, once every other week over a 2-year period of time, and not picking up on that, on anything inappropriate going on, just sounds impossible to me. Especially since it would be mandatory for her to report any suspicion.
What do you think, Darren?
What do I think? Well, I think that we have a lot of in between here. Where are we at now? Like, what point are we at now in this thing? So we've gotten from there. We've obviously had some things in between. And I didn't mean to jump all over you about the criminal case thing either.
Yeah, that's okay.
Because I thought the same thing too, because it does say in some of their statutes that in their stuff that it says, look, they can't run it. Was the criminal actions are based on the neglect, correct? Like, so there are criminal cases to neglect for them, or is there other charges added to
it? The one that they keep trying to get her to take a plea deal for is the one for not feeding their oldest when he wasn't eating. How do you feed somebody you don't know where they're at?
Right.
Or not in
makes
your
no sense. Correct.
Right.
So now, are they planning on having him come to the stand and testify to all of this stuff?
As far as I understand, yes.
And which way is he going to be testifying?
That's kind of hard to say. He has. I mean,
you don't have to give don't give any details or anything, because obviously, so you don't give up your. But is he gonna attest to these things, or is he gonna say no? This never happened, and like, is it a good sense or a bad sense of the way that this will go?
He has said both ways. So
Okay.
Honestly, I don't know.
So it's up in the air.
Now 18. Yeah, he turned 18 in May.
Okay.
So yeah.
No, Mr. Davis, is there not some sort of statutes or something that says that they should wait, or is there nothing like that? I know that in Maine they say that there's situations that they're supposed to wait for the guilty hearing, but is there anything like that out that way in California, or anything that you know of, or is that going to be one of these things we need to look at in the future to say we got to change this stuff?
There's nothing like that in California.
There's nothing.
And I don't know what the law is in North Carolina.
So if the case is brought to you from the neglect and they're charging you by the crime of neglect, they can run parallel. It doesn't matter. One doesn't need. It's like the O.J. Simpson thing,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
God, that's terrible. It really does. And you know what? I'll bet you that they'll wait till. So in my instance, they dismissed all my charges after they had TPR'd us. That's what they did, because that's what we were waiting on too, was our verdict. And then we thought that would be an idea for a great thing for the appeal, that something had changed. And they didn't even care. Didn't even matter, because what happens is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Davis, at this point now they've gotten their investigation started because of what alleged happens against them. Now they've taken their notes throughout this time period, and they're using these items against you. It's not just what it was founded at the beginning, but it's instances that has incurred over that year and a half. So I think that's why it doesn't matter that the criminal stuff, because the criminal stuff was long ago, that just started this. So I don't, like I said, I apologize for jumping on you. I mean, but
no, that's
I just,
that's
I don't want you to put all your eggs in one basket in your heart,
right?
Because that's just not. That's what I did. That's exactly what I did.
We are not putting all our eggs in one basket. We have several different ways that we're looking at this. There are just so many things that just absolutely do not add up. Looking at the judicial code, as far as a judge recusing themselves, if there's even the slightest appearance of conflict of interest.
Yeah.
This the judge that heard the civil case for the first time on June 10th, 2021. She heard it that day, the CPS case. On June 23rd, she also heard the CPS case. On June 27th, she was presiding over the first criminal hearing,
Yep.
which becomes a conflict of interest at that point.
So we
But
think.
that wasn't, she went from there going back to the CPS hearings and actually ruled on the adjudication, which, according to the rules of conduct, would make any ruling null and void. But just finding somebody that would step up and enforce that has been really hard to do.
Well, you want my opinion, or you want the man of the shows? Go for it, Mr. D. Recusals.
Well, in California, when a judge doesn't automatically recuse him or herself, you have to make a motion to have the judge recused.
My daughter did that. The judge denied it.
Okay, so there are some things, though, that are very intricate details that you probably won't know as a lawyer. No, since you're not a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, for example, in California, if you make a motion to recuse a judge under, I think it's CCP 170.1, the motion is actually sent to another county for another judge to hear it. And the trick is that the judge may sometimes get you to agree to let him or herself hear the motion, or someone in the building to hear the motion, or someone in the county to hear the motion. But the law actually says that the motion is supposed to be decided by a judge in another county, right? So I would bet 50 cents that there's something similar in your state, but nobody brought it to the judge's attention or argued that point. Because how are you going to file a motion to recuse a judge and then let that judge hear the motion?
Right.
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Now, that doesn't mean that that's not the law in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
It might be, I don't know, but you should be talking to an attorney about that.
We are trying to find one. We are trying desperately to find one, especially now that Cassie is no longer able to represent herself.
Right. That's not always a good strategy to begin with, right? So a lot of people think that they can do it and they will only be the ones only to do a good job, but they're so wrong.
Right.
They're so wrong. There's so many little things, intricate nuances in the cases.
Mm-hmm.
And in the statutes and in the law and in the legal arguments. You need somebody, that's kind of experienced. I had this conversation with an attorney the other day. And, when I was a 5-year lawyer, I thought that I knew everything there was. And there could be no more to learn. I really thought that. And then when I was maybe a 10 or 15-year attorney, I realized how important it is to have experience. Everybody thinks they know the law. That's not where the experience comes into play. The experience comes into play in terms of getting in and keeping out evidence. The experience comes into listening and making sure that you are hearing what the judge may be saying or what the other attorneys may be saying. I did a hearing today in San Diego County, and we were arguing some real technical stuff in the Welfare and Institutions Code. And after the hearing, I realized that most of the attorneys were very, very experienced, and the arguments were coming from a well thought out but yet very experienced point of view. And it was kind of a pre-trial hearing. I'll give you the scenario. I'm representing some grandparents trying to get a child placed with them. And I made a motion to give, before the hearing, which is next week, I think. Yeah. To give my clients what's called the relative placement edge, so to speak. I lost that motion based upon the arguments by the other very experienced lawyers and the very experienced judge. But then the foster parents made a motion at the same time to have a preference for called the caretaker preference. And the argument that their attorney made was such a good argument. Um, I was kind of amazed by it. But had it not been for the experience of myself and the county council and the judge, it was one of those arguments that you thought was a winner, but it really wasn't. But you had to understand the intricacies of not only the law, but the legislative intent, right?
Mhm.
And, some of the case law and some of the other statutes that are in the code that either supported or buttressed their motion.
Mhm.
And I know a lot of 5 or 10-year attorneys are going to get pissed off at me, but at a 5 or 10-year attorney probably is not going to be sophisticated or experienced enough to make those types of arguments. So I'm heading into this trial against the foster parents, and we're on equal footing. We both tried to gain an advantage before the trial started. But even that alone, you know, I wouldn't have, most attorneys probably wouldn't have even tried that motion. And the same for the foster parents attorneys, they have an attorney that's very, very knowledgeable and experienced and skillful, and you don't always see that in juvenile dependency or CPS cases. So you want to make sure that you get someone that's really experienced in the area because it makes all the difference. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I've told this story before, I think. I have a friend who was battling cancer. This is many years ago. And he was being treated at a local hospital. I won't say the name. By a doctor, a cancer doctor, an oncologist, who had all the letters after his name, but he had only been a doctor um, practicing cancer treatment for about 15, 16 years. Okay. Now you would think that a doctor of this level, of this and these qualifications, all the letters after his name, would know everything there is to know about treating your type of cancer, right? You would think that, right? He's a specialist, for God's sake. Well, he gave my friend 18 months to live. My friend got desperate and he started searching and looking and asking people and blah, blah, blah for another doctor. So, and he ended up contacting a doctor in Washington, D.C., who was at the University of Howard Medical School. Okay. Somewhat prestigious medical school back east. It's known as an HBCU, and historically black college. And he calls the guy, and because there is a connection by a friend of a friend of a friend, the doctor says, "Okay, I'll help you. Send me out all your medical records on a CD," which they do now. Everything's on CD, and I'll take a look at everything, and then you can come in. There was a 3-day weekend coming up, in a few weeks, and I'll talk to you. My friend flies out there and meets with the guy on the third day of the 3rd-day weekend. It was like a Monday holiday. The guy was working on a Monday, the cancer specialist. Now, this guy was 35 years cancer specialist and didn't have all of the fancy letters that the guy in LA had. And he tells my friend, he says, I'll just call him Johnson. "Mr. Johnson, I got good news for you and I got the bad news for you." And my friend says, "Well, what's the bad news?" He said, "This is the doctor." Okay, I may not be quoting him just right, but this was the gist. "The bad news is that your doctor back in LA doesn't know what he's doing." And my friend says, "Well, what's the good news?" The good news is we're going to call him right now and I'm going to tell him to change your treatment. So they call him on a speakerphone, and the guy takes the call because it's kind of pre-planned. And he says, the doctor in DC says to the doctor in LA, "Look, number one, you're using the wrong type of chemotherapy." Now, not being a cancer doctor, I thought all cancer treatment chemotherapy was all the same.
Mhm.
Apparently, it's not. There's like, how many brands of cigarettes there are or beer there is. That's how many, brands of cancer medication there are, right?
Right.
He says, so first of all, number one, you're using the wrong medicine. Number two, even if you were using that medicine, you're administering it in terms of duration and frequency the wrong way. Are you kidding me? This guy's an oncologist, a specialist at a very prominent hospital in Los Angeles. He's using the wrong medication. And even if he were going to use that medication, he's got the frequency and duration of the treatments per week all wrong. Now, he then DC doctor proceeds to tell LA doctor to change the medication and to administer it with this type of frequency and duration. Okay? This was years ago. My friend is still alive.
Wow.
He was only given 18 months to live by a 15 or 16-year experienced cancer oncologist here in LA. The one thing the guy in DC had was he had like 35 years, and he also taught at the medical school. They were different doctors. And it was important because without that doctor in DC, my friend would be dead
Mm-hmm.
years ago. Now, doctors are professionals. Everything they know is based upon their knowledge and experience, right? Now, take that setting and look at other types of professionals. Let's talk about lawyers. Is a 10-year lawyer the same as a 30-year lawyer? No.
Mhm.
Now, when I was a 5-year lawyer and a 10-year lawyer, I thought the answer was yes. But I see it now. I see it so clearly when I do cases and I listen to arguments and I watch attorneys try to prove or disprove something in trial. There's a world of difference. So when I tell you, you got to find a CPS attorney that's experienced, You got to do that. You know, when I was in North Carolina, I had to use, like most states, you got to employ local counsel who will stand up for you in court and tell you some of the local rules, you know, that may be different from California or Los Angeles. There was a guy that I used, or, you know, that was my local counsel, who would fall into the category of attorney you would need. I don't recall his name offhand. I can look it up for you. But one of the reasons why I was asking you how far away you were,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, he's like, you know, a 28 or 30-year attorney. He doesn't travel far,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he and I had that conversation. He, you know, "Oh, you came all the way from California to do this case." Yeah. He said, you know, I think he told me he doesn't drive more than 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If it's 45 minutes, forget it. He's not going to do it.
Yeah.
But
We're
you
about
can,
2 hours out of Greensboro.
but I can get his name and number. You can give him a call. You can tell him, "Hey, Davis referred me to you. How can you help me?" You know,
That would be great.
and he's either going to tell you one of three things. Number
Mhm.
one, I'll come do the case. Number two, I won't do the case. Leave me alone. Or number three, I won't do the case, but you know, I'll talk to you on the phone and maybe give you some pointers or tips, or maybe I know someone in your area that I can refer you to.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll look up his name and number, and you can give him a call.
Okay, that would be
Y-
great.
y- give me a call at that. See the number on the bottom right hand of the screen,
Yeah, I
888 888. So call that. You can call that 24/7. Leave a message with a live person, and I'll get the message tomorrow, and I'll remember to look him up.
okay.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Well, I think one of the other questions, I mean, the case is going to go forward. Her next date is the 11th, which is Monday. Um, is there a way, if we do not find an attorney, which we're praying hard and trying hard to find one, if we do not find one by them, is there any way to introduce the evidence that she has into the case um, through the court that day, or um,
Well,
how we go about?
wait, wait a minute. I'm not understanding your question.
She has, like I said, she
Hold
has
on, hold on.
in the
Let's do this.
therapy.
Let's do
Okay.
this. Let's not use pronouns, okay?
Okay,
So when you say she, who are you referring to?
my daughter.
She's the mother.
Yes,
Okay, so mom wants to introduce evidence
yes,
and she doesn't know how to do it.
right.
She is being represented by an attorney or by herself.
She does not have an attorney at this time.
Okay, Beth, get an attorney.
That's what we're trying to do. We've been
Okay, but,
trying.
but here's the thing, and Darren, I want you to listen to this, okay?
Mhm.
You ask me that question, Beth, like I can explain it to you, and I can tell you the secret. I can't. If your daughter had knowledge of the evidence code, the case law regarding evidence in your state, the rules on evidence, I could explain that to her. But you know what? I might as well tell her to go cure cancer
Right.
because I can't explain that either.
Yeah. We know we need an attorney, and that is we've been trying desperately to find one, and just have not been able to.
How many people have you called?
Um, over I think we're up to over 70 now.
Okay, keep calling.
We are. We're calling. I'm sending out emails, um, filling out forms online, but mostly calling.
You know, and there might be neighboring states you want to, you know, also contact attorneys. You know, like
Okay.
you're in North Carolina, maybe there's somebody in South Carolina.
We're a little bit closer to Virginia, so that
Okay.
might.
Oh, definitely Virginia.
Okay.
Definitely Virginia.
Okay.
Mhm.
You know, I used to go to Virginia a few times a year, and I did some research on CPS attorneys there, and you know, I was impressed with what I found. especially in the Richmond area.
Okay.
But, don't limit yourself just to Richmond.
Right.
There's
Well, yeah,
Fairfax,
that's a little bit far
Fairfax,
away, too.
Alexandria, but got to do your research.
Yeah. We're closer to the Hampton Roads area.
Okay.
Yeah, the peninsula around there.
Are
We
there
all
any?
go. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Were there any other specific questions you wanted to ask?
Um, I can't think of any right offhand. I do know that we had concerns about the fact that the her youngest son, who is now 6, um, when he was 4 years old in the foster home that he was in, he received second and third degree burns on his feet. They claimed it was from a spill, but looking at the pictures, especially the side pictures of his feet, you can see a clear straight line. It looks more like an immersion burn than a spill burn, and that was never investigated. Is there any way? I mean, we brought it up with the caseworkers, but it was never investigated. It was just listed as an accident.
I bet it was investigated, and they just never told you what really happened.
That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Not
If you ever get the child back in your custody, you can bring a lawsuit, for the child.
okay.
You know, um, here's I'm going to tell you something surprising, and I find this true even in Southern California. When you mention suing the county or the state because a foster child was hurt in foster care, you know, not everybody in the system thinks that's a good idea. I there is someone that told me I once won a big case and told me privately, and I would never say this person's name, but told me that they didn't think that these kids in these families deserved that money.
Mm,
I was shocked.
mm.
Have you ever taken like a metal bucket and put like 6 crabs in it? You know how many will escape? None, because they will always pull the one that's about to get out back. You put one crab in a metal bucket, you know how many will escape? One. You ever come across that mentality?
Yeah, a lot. In this case, I mean, we have not even been allowed to see these children since they were taken. Any of them. When my daughter was 8 months pregnant, the children were taken June 3rd, 2021. In August of 2021, she was 8 months pregnant. They took her into custody. They drove her to Raleigh, which is about 4 hours away, drove her back to Edenton, drove her back to Raleigh, and then supposedly because she had high blood pressure, they induced labor, took the baby. Within 48 hours, they unsecured her bonds and sent her back home, but kept the baby.
Did you see that? What I just posted? Rebecca says Cherokee County, North Carolina, just had to pay about $53 million for taking 42 children without cause.
hmm
Chowan, where this case is, have taken almost as many children, many without cause.
Yes,
Wow.
there are over 36 children in Chowan County custody right now.
There must be a small county. 36.
It is, but when up until about 5 or 6 years ago, The yearly average of children in Chowan County custody was 6, and then it's grown drastically since 2016 when they introduced a new policy regarding safety plans. That in the minutes of the DSS board meeting, it states that this new policy would place more children in foster care. And it was regarding the safety plans, which are the same things that they used in Cherokee County to remove the children.
Well, it's a
Oh,
good
Jesus.
way for the county to make money
Yeah, it is.
from the federal government.
How many kids were taken into custody in
There-
Chowan County?
36 right now.
36. There's only 13,000 people in that community. Chowan County. The population is 13,000.
Yeah. There's a father who had 7 children taken at the same time that Cassie's children were taken. He and I both went to see Norman Sanderson, our senator, hoping to get someone, just anybody, to investigate this agency, because of the fact that the caseworker repeatedly lied to get children and then didn't blink twice at committing perjury in order to keep the children.
Wow.
And nothing's been done.
You interested in being a captain for our cause, Miss Beth?
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay, Grace, please contact Beth. She's going to be a captain in North Carolina.
Awesome.
You know, I always tell people this. We're going to look back on this 50 years from now, and people are going to scratch their head and think, what were we doing to families?
Mm-hmm.
What were we thinking? Anyway, Beth, we're coming close to the end of the show. Any last questions you have for me?
I don't think so. If I can just, I'll call and get that other information that you said with the attorney in Greensboro. I'll call and get that information.
Sounds good. Well,
Good.
Beth, thank you for coming on and sharing your story and your information and your questions. I'd like to have you back anytime, okay?
Okay, thank you so much. I look forward to working with y'all as a captain here.
Alrighty, thanks, Beth.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Beth.
Okay, Mr. Guai, anything you want to ask me this evening or comment on?
You know, I don't even know what you would call them. The crab joke today. That was I've never heard the crab one. The crab motivational thing. I want to start a little list of Davis dilemma caused dilemma somethings. So we got the elephant one and the crab one now. But what was the reference? So the crab one, explain that to me. You're talking about people trying to get on top, and then the struggle of crabs, they pull everyone down, right? So that's saying that if you have so many people trying to tug at you with which way to go, you'll fail. Is that where you were going with that?
No. Let me ask you a question. You're involved kind of as a social media influencer in the CPS arena.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever heard anybody say anything negative about you?
Of course, all the time.
Wonder why that is.
I wonder that question all the time. If you're good and you're out trying to help.
Why don't we all band together and help each other instead of fighting each other and criticizing each other? You know, a defense attorney once told me on a civil rights case, nothing will ever change. Parents will never get together and work together.
Mm-hmm. I see that.
Think about that. Not his whole, but most of his income is made from defending, social workers. A lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't believe things will ever change because parents will never band together. It's kind of that I don't know if you want to. It's not Stockholm, but I forget what the syndrome they call it, where a few people could always dominate a large number of people
Hmm.
because the large number of people may not work together.
But it seems like it's such a simple goal that it would be.
You would think
I
you
talked to
would.
someone. I talked to someone today earlier, and they're like, "How is this? This is so simple. It's kids. How are they not?" I bet you this is probably not even on the top 5 list of politicians in their elections or anything.
No, nobody's thinking about this.
No,
No,
there's not
nobody's thinking.
anybody. No, and you're right. You know what? You're absolutely right. Anywhere you look, they'll try to be chopping you down for being, Vince Davis, da da da, and all you've done. And I just said this to a gentleman tonight that I was speaking to. I said, this guy has videos. I said, this guy gives away information for everybody that can't afford media, everything. I'm like, this guy does more than any other person. If you look up online, it's you that comes across the top all the way. And it's because you go out and you do these things for these people, but you go down and look at your, and there's people be hating on you for, whatever reasons. And it's ridiculous, like absolute ridiculous. Like, look at your track record, look at your social media sites. You've got more videos than Justin Bieber, for God's sakes. You know what I mean? And you're not making money for those. Those are just you trying to throw information out to help people. So why would people talk down upon you?
It's just human
No,
nature. Human nature.
it's
You know,
ridiculous.
in the past, people would comment on a video negatively or on the channel negatively, and I said, "Well," I would ask the question, "Well, why do you watch it?
Right.
Don't you have something better to do than
Right.
watch these shitty videos?"
Right. The one, and you seem to be you're at every one of them. Now we can see this. Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy, but I wish that they could. I mean, this is my whole thing, like obviously my fight's to somehow one way or the other get my daughter back, but then, it's to get this thing stopped. And I mean, we're doing what we can do for get the groups together and, try to do it that way. At least if we can get people looking at politics in the same mindset, that's a start.
Yeah,
If we get,
I got a question for you
all right,
because I was somewhat busy on Saturday after the seminar started. How did the seminar turn out?
it went well. Miss G did a nice job. She did really good. Um, I can't remember the name of the attorney that we had at the end of the day. The two of them, one was it Keisha and then the other one, but they were awesome. They were firecrackies. You're sorry, they were firecrackers. But your point your point PowerPoint presentation, well done.
You like that? I was trying. Connie raised the bar on me. I had to
Right.
step up.
I, Well, when I watched her second one, when she's coming into it, I'm like, oh boy, now you've got Mr. Davis coming into her second one. It's like that was like, we were watching, when I was a kid, we watched WrestleMania and stuff. That's what I was thinking about when I saw Connie had the PowerPoint, and then you were so excited about your PowerPoint. I was thinking of the old days, like coming into the ring Sunday.
I've gotten a couple requests just to send that video, that part, out to relatives that are facing this relative placement challenge.
Yeah,
So
no,
hey, Grace, do me a favor, cut that video, edit it where it's just that video, that one presentation, so I can send it to those relatives and they can watch it.
yeah, you had a lot of information in there that I'm like, if we would have only known, like if you would
Right.
only, I mean, you hit, and I'm only saying this because I lived it, like your PowerPoint was right on the money, and there's a lot that information itself would have been worth what you had to pay to get in there.
Hey, I got a question for you.
Mhm.
All of the attorneys that appeared Saturday and before, I'm thinking about calling them or contacting them or having Grace contact them and ask them if they want to be part of a regular show on the channel.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Because I got really good feedback, and I was thinking, well, this is not something we should just limit to once a month.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they want to do it once a week or
Yeah,
twice a week or three
right,
times a
or
week.
every other, whatever
Yeah.
it is, and then have everybody get together, and you could almost, you could almost make it so that it would be when you do your month-to-month seminars, it's a conglomeration of everybody gets together and discusses things, opposed to one-on-one or whatever. like
Right.
a round table circle or whatever you would call it. It would be pretty cool.
Somebody made a suggestion that at our next one, we should enact, somehow enact a CPS trial. Like have the different players or actors assume different roles, and
Yeah,
then have someone like overall say things about the trial and the strategies and this and that. What do
I
you think of
sent
that?
I sent you that link, right, for that app.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
have it.
Um,
It's
and
pretty
I've
cool.
been thinking, Corey is so generous with his time. I was thinking maybe asking him, "Hey man, you want to come on the show once a week?"
Yeah,
And
he's
just,
he's so full of good information. I'm not
I
that
know.
everybody else isn't, and he's so just he's just pretty. I called him out on the bow tie. He wasn't wearing a bow tie. I don't know if you caught that,
Oh no, no, I didn't.
but that was the first thing that I went to was he has no bow tie on. Must be on vacation.
And what did he say? What did he say?
He said he was on vacation.
Uh,
He was out in the woods or something. He was out. But yeah, he's just awesome, man. He's just doesn't matter. Like Miss G asked him a bunch of questions, and like he just can. I mean, the guy can just fire so much information off on you. It's crazy. I don't even think there's nothing that he can't just handle. If you asked him about a dinosaur on Mars, I'm sure he would probably have an answer for you. Art same way. Art's great. He's the same way. Every question you ask him, the guys are like boom, boom, boom. And then you guys work together quite often, right?
we have a
Yeah.
trial tomorrow together.
Do you?
Mhm.
How is that? How is that when you work with another attorney and you're the parents? How is that when you work together and all of like? Is it hard to get used to like? Okay, this guy's way is going to be better than mine, or how does that
No,
play
no.
out?
The one I've known Art so long and been on so many cases with him. When we are on the same side, and like tomorrow we're on the same side, um, it's it's kind of like watching, you know, um, a well scripted play. You know,
Right.
a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, he and I did a trial together. He had the mom and I had the dad, and we won this uh, broken bone case, and he, as the mom's attorney, went first in his cross examination and direct examination of the experts, and then I went afterwards, and like would do the cleanup and stress really important points that he brought out, but I would re-stress it. So it's kind of like it's well scripted. And the trial we have tomorrow, he and I have been talking a lot about it and strategizing a lot about it. Um, but it's because he's very experienced.
Right.
I, I I'm like 37 years an attorney, and I think he's like 29 or 30 years attorney. So he's got a lot of experience as well.
See, that would be a cool thing too. If you took during the week, if you took your guys' conversations, you two, and just conversated, and if you could bleep out the case names, if you could make it so it was good enough so that you could listen to it without a beep 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 beep, that would be really
Right.
cool. To then you could lead up and talk to someone, like you could show your conversation. So Mr. Davis, I think we need to have some Action Davis footage because after I looked at Double O's website and he's got those snippets of, him and I don't know if you've checked that out yet, but
Oh,
man,
I have. I've seen him.
yeah,
Yeah.
man, he lights those police officers up. It's crazy. You just can't help but root for the guy. It's just a website of him doing like, God, get him. You don't
But
ever hear that,
but his trials aren't confidential though.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. So if you could do that some way, that would be really cool too, because
Yeah.
no one sees the inside actions of these. This is the other part that people don't get. Like you go to court TV, you see all the criminal stuff all day long. Juvenile court out of the eyes of the family, so they don't care. They don't think it exists.
Right.
No one knows about it till they're in it. In reality, of this whole
Yeah.
situation. So
All
yeah,
right, Mr. Guai, thank you for joining me this evening.
yes, sir.
And I will see you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good night.